Hi, thank you for tuning in to the Finding Harmony podcast with me, your host, Harmony Slater. Hi, welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. I'm here today with Russell Case.
Harmony.
Hello.
As you know, I just got back from Chicago.
Yes.
I drove out there, and it was a very long drive.
Delivered a painting.
I did. I went to visit the Mornar family in Racine, Wisconsin. I delivered a couple of paintings, helped them install it. I got a lovely visit with Joey and Sarah and their beautiful, precocious girls, Jane and Annabelle. Had a lovely time, and I drove all the way back.
Yeah.
And as you know, I spent 48 hours behind the wheel of the car, all told, there and back.
A lot of weather. You encountered a lot of weather.
Did encounter a lot of weather events there and back. And also, I listened to about 30 hours of Dan Carlin's hardcore history podcast.
There's a lot of podcasts out there that you could have chosen.
And I took notes on the Celtic Holocaust for today's podcast. If there's any interest,
I don't think we're going to be talking about the Celtic Holocaust.
But I'm just saying, I'm ready.
You're ready.
If anyone, our guest today may have an interest in the Celtic Holocaust, I don't know.
Not sure. Our guest is very interested in many things. So.
I actually had that on my topics to discuss.
Right? Well, our guest today is Nick Heath. Hello, Nick.
Hi, Mr. Heath.
The Breathing Diabetic.
No relation to Ted Heath, the former Prime Minister of Great Britain, because that's what I thought.
Not that I know of.
Because I thought you were British. I thought we were going to talk about your uncle Ted.
No. And the Celtic
Holocaust. And you were going to opine on how England became Anglo-Saxon.
No.
We could go there. Your audience might tune out real quick.
It's the Celtic Saxon tribes of northern Europe and Germany that created the conditions for England to suffer the Viking incursions later on in the 9th century. Okay. So I just think it's maybe Ted's nephew here might be able refocus.
Okay, so
actually, it turns out you're from Florida.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
Born and raised my whole life.
Your people came from Scandinavia to Florida directly, or did they come through New York?
I'm not sure.
Your parents settled Florida? Is that what you said?
Yes. They discovered it.
There's that first wave of immigrants with air conditioners on their back, and they settled in Satellite Beach, Florida, and they just kind of made their home there.
Yeah.
Wow.
I actually grew up in just outside of Jacksonville.
Jacksonville, you must be a Jaguar man. Are you a Jaguar man?
You're going to be blown away. I'm a Rams fan because my dad loved the Rams growing up. And so I love the Rams. And so I'm a Rams football. I'm actually a Lakers basketball fan, which is another long story. So I'm actually an LA person, apparently. But
so your father's from St. Louis originally. His family's from St. Louis, Missouri. When they were the St. Louis Rams.
We were fans of them when they were in LA. Then they went to St. Louis, and then they went back to LA.
Back to LA. Yeah. Wow. See, I do think that maybe you have a future in Hollywood. You've got this leading man looks, and you were a meteorologist, a weatherman at one point on the TV.
No, he wasn't a weatherman.
And you really look the part. And I think if you went back to LA, I think very quickly you get yourself an agent. Very quickly you'd be on the TV again. You're so beautiful. I can't stop looking at you.
That's my plan after this. I have it written down. LA.
Maybe it's about going to LA and doing breathing classes on television for the mass populace.
Oh,
that I could get behind.
Does he do that?
Yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about today. Not the weather, not meteorology, which we could talk about.
You are a master at meteorology.
Kind of has to do with the weather, breathing. We need good air quality to have good breathing quality. So
tell us about your childhood. Let's get into that. You developed type 2 diabetes,
type
not
1
to be confused.
diabetes.
Type 2.
No?
Type 1.
Type 1.
Oh, type
autoimmune. Yeah.
Autoimmune. You had the disorder, the childhood. Oh.
Yeah, I got it when I was 11.
That's not fixable, is it?
No.
Not yet.
Oh.
You know what I heard about, and I would love to talk to you about this.
I thought his breathing fixed the diabetes.
No, it's not fixable. Exactly.
Oh.
It is it's manageable.
Of course, yeah. You can live with it, right? And a lot of us do. Millions of us do, but yeah.
But I thought, so you have so much vast knowledge on the science of breathing and oxygen and all the things and also how it affects your health and diabetes, and this is like a real big passion of yours. But I read this thing the other day that was really interesting to me, talking about how they're noticing adults who have autoimmune issues developing type 1 diabetes later in life, and it being mistaken for type 2 diabetes, but it's actually type 1 diabetes. Have you read anything about that?
Yes, I'm going to mispronounce the acronym, but it's LADA, latent autoimmune diabetes in adults, I believe is what it stands for.
Yeah,
and it's definitely increasing. I don't know much about it other than, it's been on the rise, and I do interact with people. They'll send me, because I'm the breathing diabetic, I talk a lot about or I used to talk a lot about diabetes especially, but they'll send me like, hey, I just got diagnosed, I have LADA. And so I've gotten several of those emails, and it is interesting to see like an uptick in it. But it's unfortunate they get misdiagnosed, and it just causes, more emotional distress and all these things you have to go through with. First, though, it's type 2. No, wait, you're going to need to take insulin the rest of your life. There's no, things like that. So it can be pretty, maybe even more damaging than just type 1, out the get-go. So. Yeah,
because when you're a child and, it's noticed that you have diabetes, typically unless it's type 2 diabetes, which is unfortunate, but, you're a healthy kid, out there in the world just being a kid, and then, struggling with, insulin and blood sugar issues. And so it's obvious that it's type 1. And so then right away, it's like, this isn't your fault. It's not like your lifestyle. It's not, you need to exercise more or something like that. And so it feels a little less personal, maybe, than later on in life when, people are like, oh, you need to change your diet, you need to exercise more, and you're trying to do all the things, and still, you're having these issues, and it's not really also your fault.
Yeah, and another interesting part about, exactly, it's not also your fault then either, right? There's so many genetics and all these things, but as like a kid, though, it is nice. I mean, that's not nice. I should never say that. But like, I don't really remember life without diabetes. So it's kind of nice that to me, it's just life. Like, it's not, I don't sit around and remember the days or, I just like, it's just how, it could be a lot worse. Whatever. I got to do what I got to do.
Yeah. How did you know that something was, did you ever, that you just answered the question, but how did it transpire that that your parents found out and that you then had to be treated for diabetes, for type 1 diabetes?
I got really sick. So I was basically in, I guess, ketoacidosis, which means, my blood sugar is super high, but I don't have any insulin. So I have ketones being released. And so my blood just became super toxic, and I got what seemed like a flu, right? I was just vomiting all the time, was super sick. I was always thirsty, and eventually I started throwing up blood. And when my dad saw that, he came in my room and saw it and said, let's go to the hospital. We got to go now.
Yeah.
And I got there and they said, good thing you did. You could have died. My blood sugar was like in the 700s or something.
Wow.
Apparently. I don't remember that part, but
how old were you?
11. Yeah, 11.
11.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was like, but it was like I was so upset. I was so thirsty. Like, you were always thirsty.
Yeah.
And so, like, the first thing they asked, like, oh, you know, you have diabetes. And then the first thing I asked was, well, can I have a Diet Coke, please? Like, I just wanted a soda so bad.
Yeah.
I was like, I'll just take diet soda, whatever it takes.
Oh my gosh.
So that's how bad I was down the rabbit hole.
Oh.
Did you feel that your diet was sort of out of whack at that time, or just a normal?
My diet? Yeah,
it was
I mean,
just a
of
normal
course, it
kid.
was great. I was a normal kid. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
It's not like we knew nothing. We, you know, you just ate what was there. You know, I, especially then at age 11, I was just, you know, I was always a picky eater.
Yeah.
So I was, my poor mom had to deal with, like, if like a dot of ketchup touched my French fries, I would throw them away because it was so gross. Like, I was just real picky, OCD about what I ate. So just very plain person. Was
it sugar sensitive? Like, because I mean, I would think ketchup is like, oh, I don't want sugar in my food.
Not that.
Wasn't anything like that.
No. It's just I was always weird. I guess I don't know if I have a good answer, but
right.
But like, no, I mean, I was never too into sweets, really. But it is interesting. Like, now, I don't really have like a sweet tooth. I don't know if it's because of diabetes that steered me away or what, but like, I just don't really look forward to desserts or like candy or anything like that. And I don't know if that has anything to do with diabetes or not, because, you know, I could obviously still eat it and take insulin and things like that, but I just have no desire, which is kind of good.
It's interesting though, because I don't eat really sugar either, like barely ever. And I never crave sugar. I don't want it. I don't miss it. It's not like, so I think it's like, if you just don't eat it, then your body doesn't really crave it. You know, it's like one of those, sugar's one of those things, you know, that's yeah, I mean, I guess everything's like that with our bodies. I mean, you would know probably with all the research you do.
Wow.
But the more we take of something, right, our body starts to like want that thing or crave that thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you put them upstairs and just lock them up there? Sorry, we're just getting rid of our dogs. Yeah. They are causing us a problem right now. So Russell's putting them upstairs.
Okay.
Sometimes they're good and they sleep the whole time, and sometimes they fight and like play. That's when they get put upstairs.
My dog usually barks, so I like have to let her out. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
She'll start barking at something as much as I want her right beside me here. It's like, no, can't do it.
Yeah, can't do it. Okay, back to our bodies. Our bodies adapting.
Yeah, breathing's a great tool for adapting too.
So, well, I can't imagine that as an 11-year-old you started looking up pranayama and breathing exercises. How was your daily life at that point? Like going to school and managing your condition?
I mean, it was, I guess, probably scary for my parents, right? They, you know, you don't know what's going on with your kid, and their blood sugars could go low or high. But for me, it was just like, well, I'm a kid. I just need to keep doing it. I was obsessive with skateboarding. So like my entire childhood was just skateboarding, which probably saved my life because I didn't do drugs. I didn't do anything. Yeah. I mean, I literally, all I did was wake up and think about skateboarding all day, every day.
Wow.
Amazing.
So it was really nice. Yeah. It was like a great outlet for me. And then that turned into surfing later in life. But really, I mean, I had to bring a little cooler with snacks, like extra sugar in case my blood sugar got low. Had to bring my insulin. I had to go to the clinic to test my blood sugar during the day and things like that. You know, it was definitely made me a little different or whatever, but I never got too hung up on it, to be honest. Like, I don't know if, you know, my parents, if anything, they gave me more freedom because they didn't want me to think diabetes was holding me back, you know? So
right.
I think it kind of made my older brother mad because I got to do things, you know, at a way younger age than he ever did. Like, you know, okay, you can go on with them, you can do this, even though like at my age, he couldn't do that. But yeah, so it was a huge adjustment, but like I I never thought like, oh, my life sucks. Like I just kind of thought like it's what I have to do. I was too young to really understand what was going on, I think.
Yeah, you just like get on with it and manage and have certain things that you do regularly, and it becomes a part of your routine.
Yeah, indeed.
Were you giving yourself shots and taking blood like at school and that sort of thing?
Yeah, all of that. Yeah.
Okay.
And when I started high school was right when insulin pumps became popular, or more, I guess more accessible is probably the right word. I know they had been around, but that's when they first became like, you can get it, just go to your endocrinologist, speak with them, and they'll get you a pump. And so when I started high school, I had an insulin pump, which was a lifesaver. I don't use one anymore. I'm kind of weird. I've gone like backwards on technology. I don't use any type of devices anymore, which some people would probably curse at me for, but I just, it's a lifestyle thing. But in high school and college, having a pump was like the best thing ever, because it gave me so much more freedom to not have to take shots all the time. I could just push a couple buttons and it would inject insulin, and that was nice.
What does it do? Like, for those of us who don't know exactly, like an insulin pump, is it embedded in your skin, or is it, what do you do with it?
There's different types now, but so I don't know what the latest technology is, but when I was using them, it was essentially just a little tube with a very small catheter, probably like, half an inch, not even, that would be in your belly. You would inject it in your stomach, and then it would, with a needle, you would pull the needle out, and it would just leave this really small plastic catheter inside of your in your fat area. And then it just drips insulin all day. So you have a pump with an insulin cartridge, and it would just drip insulin out of, you set up a rate with your doctor, find the right balance. And then anytime you ate, you could just push a few buttons and it would inject more, rather than having to pull out a needle and take a shot. But now I'm like, I'm 36 now. I live it. I work from home. I am like I try to live like a monk with my routine, like same thing every single day. So I can get away with way less flexibility. So I'm very fortunate in that stance that like I can take shots again, because I know exactly when I'm going to eat. I know exactly what I'm going to eat basically almost every day. So
yeah. And do you find in college, or when you're younger,
I needed it then. Yeah.
You're like up late.
I'm doing whatever I want.
You can see how it would be. That's super nice to not have to be so rigid with your schedule, and you can just like live life feeling like kind of normal, right?
Right. I mean, you feel that was like one hiccup for me, is like having the pump attached to me was weird, because like if someone sees the cord coming from your pocket, they might ask. I mean, I got to the point where I didn't care at all, right? It was, but it's just like it kind of makes you feel odd when you have this cord hooked into your stomach all the time you're walking around. But it was such a lifesaver for me that I didn't care at all.
Did sleeping affect your insulin levels at all? Did you ever notice that?
For sure.
How you slept changed things?
Of course.
In what way?
Well, there are a lot of ways, but like, when you sleep well, your blood sugars are better usually, right? You have better insulin sensitivity, which is really nice. And, back at that age, I didn't really make those connections exactly. Like, I didn't really think like, oh, I slept well, I have insulin. I just was a kid. I just slept, I woke up, I did whatever. But now I can look back and see these patterns. But also, diabetes creates a lot of sleep problems, because like if your blood sugar gets low or your blood sugar gets high, or your pump, if some malfunction happens or some sort of alert, and then it wakes you up in the middle of the night, because it's really important to fix it, right? You need that. I actually had a big issue. This is the primary reason me personally I got off of a pump, is that the little catheter inside sometimes gets an occlusion where it kinks a little, like just slightly, and the insulin isn't being delivered. More modern pumps detect that, and they tell you, hey, there's an occlusion, you need to change it. But back then it was not that sensitive. So there were so many nights I would wake up and my blood sugar would be like 350 or something crazy, because I fell asleep, it got the occlusion, I rolled wrong, and then I didn't get insulin all night. And so to me, just taking a long lasting insulin once a day, that prevents that from ever happening. So I like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Long tangent.
So like, but I was just thinking about college nights and doing, all-nighters and wondering how that would affect your insulin levels and if it would throw it off.
For sure. Yeah. And I didn't make that connection. Like, I wasn't good at being like, oh, I'm going to party with my friends, or I'm going to stay up super late and study, or whatever it was. Like, I just was like, oh, my blood sugars stink again. I don't know why I kind of didn't ever make that connection until I became more introspective, started meditating, doing all this breathing stuff, and realizing, oh, there's a connection between there's the dogs. They're back.
They broke out of their little cage.
Good for them.
She's the clever one.
They'll probably behave now, though, so that's good. Yeah. They got disciplined.
So I don't know if I ever made the direct connection, I should say. I don't know. I don't remember being in college and being like, I didn't sleep well, my blood sugars are going to be bad. It was more just like, oh, my blood sugars are bad again. And then it took some self-awareness and kind of learning on my side to start taking better control of it.
Well, I'm super interested in this of how different things in our life and our situations with our bodies, how they inform the kinds of choices that we make, professional choices, life choices that we make. And you mentioned that you had started studying science and meteorology, and I'm interested in the arc of this self-discovery that you have. Do you think at any point that your diabetic condition led you towards a particular path of inquiry that then
100%.
led you here? And I wonder if you could tell us how that developed for you.
Yeah, there's everything is incremental, but there was one specific event, and it was just a book. And it's so my wife's stepfather, so my stepfather-in-law, he gave me a book. He heard a guy on a podcast talking about his son with diabetes, and he changed the way he ate, and his blood sugar got better. So he left the book on my bed one day, said, hey, I was visiting. He's like, hey, you might find this interesting. So I picked it up and I read through it, and I got through 6 pages. And you got to realize, I never read books. I thought I didn't
really.
Oh yeah, and you would, now Harmony knows all I do is read books. But in college and all that, I did not read books. I read what I needed to do to get good grades. I was obsessive about learning, but I was never exposed to the fact that literally anything you could ever want in life is in a book somewhere. It's best, it didn't click back then.
Wow.
So now, I read,
the Celtic Holocaust, for example, is widely written about.
And if you want to learn how to be a green screen meteorologist,
you can also...
There are the Idiot's Guide to Green Screen Meteorology.
I wrote the book, actually.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Just that little point, because maybe people aren't familiar with your work, and maybe they don't know you. But I'm every week, I'm like, how on earth does Nick read all these books so quickly and digest the material? You have a superpower when it comes to reading and comprehension.
I just love it. Yeah. Well, thank you. But it gets back to what I said about skateboarding. It's I get obsessive with things I enjoy. And now I'm self-aware enough to know when it's good or bad, right? It's learning. And there's times when I'm like, oh, I'm learning too much, Nick. You need to step back, because you're becoming, you're learning too many different things, and you need to just apply the simple things, but
assimilate.
Assimilate. And my headphones keep going crazy, so let me replug in. But there we go. But in any case, that book was it was called The New Evolution Diet. It's one of those paleo type books.
Yeah.
Nowadays I don't talk about diet ever, because everyone's different. We all know there's flaws in different people and different styles. So I don't like to preach anything, but it gave me what's the word? Agency. I started eating these things. They were green. They're called vegetables. And my blood sugar got better. It was like, oh my God, I had never eaten a vegetable probably in my life. Like I lived off of like subs and chips and now I'm eating fruits and vegetables at every meal, and it was just like my blood sugars got better and that like lit a fire in me to learn. So that's when I became like a voracious, whatever. Yeah. I read a lot. I started reading books all the time because I was like, if this is in this book, what else is in books? And it was
That's amazing.
25 years old, 26 or 25 to realize that. And haven't looked back. So that's how I got started. But the breathing and stuff's a little different, but that's how I got started on like my health journey, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. I have a little sidebar question about that before we go on to learning about, I think the Wim Hof method that you started with. I have a lot of diabetes in my family, type 2 diabetes, with my own stepfather, my mom, my brother, both have developed diabetic conditions from pre-diabetic conditions. My brother went into a ketoacidosis coma at one point, and it really scared him and got him straight. And I think as he described, the biggest problem was smoking dope and then eating a bag of brownies at 2 a.m. Like that was really the key to his condition was, if he could just work on that habit. But he noticed that at one point a couple years ago it was much more popular. My mom and I and Harmony all kind of started looking at a keto diet for whatever reason.
Although we were doing vegan keto, which not recommended, pretty much impossible.
Vegan keto diet. And so like the idea is to put yourself into, I think, like a mild state of ketoacidosis. And my brother
ketosis, a little different. Yeah.
I don't know how to say it, but my brother's like, this is insane. This almost killed me. And you're putting yourself into ketosis on purpose.
Nick can tell you all about the difference.
Tell us all about the difference and why this is not a good thing to do.
Well, it's a little different. Yeah. So with diabetes ketoacidosis, the problem is that you don't produce insulin. So your blood sugar gets really high. You have all this sugar circulating in your system. But because you don't have insulin, it tells your body there's no sugar there because the cells aren't getting that sugar. And so what your body does is it starts using fat for energy, and that produces ketones. And so they call it ketoacidosis because you have super high elevation of ketones and your blood sugar is super high. And it creates just this like toxic environment for everything. Right. Ketosis is basically when your blood sugar and insulin levels are very low. Like the natural response is to burn fat for fuel. As far as I know, again, I'm not a diet expert by any means, but and so you're burning fat for fuel, and that can be therapeutic in some cases for short-term use. Some people love it long-term. I've tried everything under the sun. It wasn't sustainable for me. Maybe, of course people will tell you, oh, you just didn't do it right or whatever it is. But for me, it wasn't sustainable. But I did. You can definitely get decent control of your blood sugars, but it might be, I won't talk about it because I don't know enough about it, but I don't do that for myself personally.
We tried it too. And I think in the short term, it was helpful, maybe interesting. But I also agree it was very difficult to sustain as like a lifestyle. And maybe some people are better at it than others. I don't know.
Feel crazy all the time.
A little bit, yeah. It does kind of put you in a bit of a manic state at times, I think. But yeah, it's interesting.
Okay.
So tell us how then, so you started reading all these books, you started on this health journey, you're experimenting with different diets and, sort of monitoring your, how your body's responding to all these different things. How did you get into breathing? How did you come across like breathwork and breathing and realize that was a huge key component for you?
How could that possibly affect your blood sugar?
Right. That was the question I was trying to answer.
Yeah.
So I found it through. So the first place I ever heard of controlled breathing was Mark Devine's book, like The Way of the Seal or something. So this is a long time ago. My interests have gone well, and I still actually. Yeah, his book was really pivotal for. He talked about box breathing. He said, "Oh, Navy SEALs use box breathing," and I was like, "Okay, so it's okay. As a guy, I can do this stuff." You know, he gave me acceptance because this is back before it was like it didn't feel this. You know, in any
that
case,
was a really big book too. I think, right? Like it was a huge book where I think it was a lot of people's first introduction to breath work. Like
and yoga. He got me to go do yoga. I thought, if he does yoga, I'll go do yoga. And it was like, amazing. So I kind of only in the past year or so remembered that I was doing some box breathing every now and then. But I had been into meditation. So I'd been practicing meditation, and eventually someone, it was like a Tim Ferriss podcast or something. And they had Wim Hof on. And I thought, he is so charismatic and just, you can fix everything and just breathe, mother effers, and all this stuff. And I was like, this is my dude here, right? So I became obsessed with the Wim Hof method and started doing it, but it was not for diabetes, like at all. It was just like personal transformation, a little bit of spirituality, like what's the point of life? Why am I here? Things like that. And so I was doing the Wim Hof method pretty regularly, and that put me into the mindset that like the breath is powerful. So that kind of laid the foundation. And I always say now, because I don't practice it anymore, but I always say like the Wim Hof method's like the gateway drug into breathing, because you learn immediately that it can change your physiology, your mind, all these different things, how many push-ups you can do or whatever, whatever gets you excited about breathing. But then I heard Patrick McEwen later on, and he talks about a more kind of it more like, he talks sciencey. He kind of resonated with me. So, you breathe through your nose and there's nitric oxide and resistance and more oxygen uptake. And he's talking about this thing called the Bohr effect and carbon dioxide. And it just like ignited the nerd in me to try it. And he talked about mouth tape, like, tape your mouth at night, you'll sleep better. And so I was at a point in my life where I was like, just things weren't clicking health wise. So I was like, I'm going to try this mouth stuff tonight. Like I went to the Walgreens right down the street, picked it up, slept great. Like if it hadn't been for that first night or the kind of first 3 or 4 nights, like who knows if I would have been this obsessed. But it was like, I went from always tired, napping, just never feeling like I have energy, to like boom through the roof, like reading papers at work, like, I gotta they could do this, and like just my mind felt so clear and focused. And I thought it was just because I was sleeping better, right, and not mouth breathing at night. And so over time it improved my blood sugars. I started trying other things, and I found my blood sugars were better, and thought, holy shit, right? I need to share this with people. Like this is crazy. Like you just breathe, and I found, there's a paper published in Nature, Scientific Reports about breathing for diabetes. Here's another paper published over here and about breathing and diabetes and how relaxation techniques. And I thought, how has no one talked about this? And so I just started sharing it, and it snowballed into 5 years of research and work.
Yeah.
One of the things that I do is I'll roll onto my left side.
Okay.
And I'll hold Harmony's mouth closed.
Good for you.
And that's how she maintains nasal breathing at night. Because otherwise, it's kind of loud in the house, and I find it difficult to sleep. She sleeps much better.
I don't know. I got the hostage tape though.
You used it one night.
I've used it a couple of nights.
You should really use it every night.
Maybe I should.
You really should. Because
I've heard good things of that one, but I've never used it.
She sleeps terribly.
It's on there. It doesn't come off easily.
There you go.
Oh man, and I just
you gotta peel it off in the morning.
And I can't imagine how anyone could wake up from the way that Harmony sleeps and feel rested. Because it is like someone is strangling her slowly to death every night, and she is, in like
that's because you are strangling me.
Oh man, she's just like crawling through the shit in Vietnam trying to escape. And I'm like, oh baby, you need help. You need to get someone on the show that can help you with your breathing.
And then we called Nick.
Yeah.
Because you've got you're sugar sensitive, you don't sleep, you're tired.
I have autoimmune disorder.
You have an autoimmune disorder
it's
now.
all there.
Who could possibly help you with this?
Nick.
Oh, that's terrible.
I don't know.
I sleep great. I love sleeping. And solid 8.5 hours every night, fall right to sleep.
So when you started... Yeah, he's a miracle of nature.
Yeah. Let's all compliment each other. Nice.
But do you think is it the diabetes that was not allowing you to sleep properly? Or was it just like the mouth breathing? Or have you figured out why it changed so significantly?
I think I'd become like and I hate to even talk about this because it's not what Wim Hof suggests. Like Wim Hof is actually pretty modest in his suggestions for how the crazy things he does. But I had become a habitual mouth breather because I thought, I need to breathe like this all the time. I thought, I never heard mouth versus nose, anything. So, I was always breathing through my mouth, which we know now like activates the sympathetic nervous system, chronic stress, less oxygenation to your brain, to your tissues and things. And then, that was translating for sure tonight. I was for sure breathing with my mouth open. So when I switched to nasal, it was like, heaven's gates opened. It was this like miraculous. And now it's like, I don't feel that. I mean, I always feel good, but like that, that was a really significant night and day.
Yeah.
Mind blowing shift that didn't make any sense to me.
Wow. Yeah. And then how did that lead into you? I think then you went into becoming a breathing instructor or doing some more in-depth breathwork training. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I ended up going. So I started practicing the things Patrick was promoting through the Oxygen Advantage. So I was doing like the lighter breathing, nasal breathing, some walking breath holds. And on my own, I was doing slow breathing, like things I teach now, right? Like 6 breaths a minute, and just relaxed for relaxation. And I was so obsessed. I was like, Patrick was coming to the United States. I was in Florida. He was coming to Portland. So the exact opposite side of the country. But I said, I want to become an instructor, not to teach people. I just wanted to learn from him. Like, I just was like, I can't wait to learn from Patrick. So I flew out there. This was in March of 2018. So it's been a little over 5 years now. And became an Oxygen Advantage instructor. And that was really, again, just for my own nerdiness. But I did start teaching every now and then. But it was really like that was a catalyst for me to keep going. Like Patrick was interested in the research I was sharing with him. Like I was like, hey, I found this paper. Like when I was there, right when I got back to the Airbnb the first night, because he had asked me like, why are you here? I actually lied on my intake form because they basically said if you have type 1 diabetes, you shouldn't come because there's, in all fairness, like he didn't like, he was just trying to be protective. He didn't, can drop your blood sugar fast. So they were kind of like, I just left it off. Let's say that. I just strategically omitted it.
It doesn't matter.
But once I was there, I told him, go ahead. Sorry.
But just to say that if you had died, then the liability is yours and not his. And that's what's
exactly. Yeah. You got your priorities straight, Russell.
That's right.
But I told him, during the, you go around the room, introduce yourself. And I said, I have type 1 diabetes. And I could see him and the other instructor's eyes kind of like widen. And I was like, and this method's changed my life. And I just want to learn it more. And so he talked with me a little extra, like, you got to be careful and things. So that night I sent him an email with like a bunch of papers and like, I was like, here's all and I had like a 1-sentence summary of each one. I was like, you probably won't have time to read it, but blah, blah, And he was awesome. Like, this is really neat. Yeah. And so it gave me like that validation sort of, like, what you're doing is cool. So
what is it that could like drop the blood sugar that they were concerned about?
It's really the breath holds. So when you put yourself into a mild hypoxia, like you drop your blood oxygen saturation, it can, in some people, lower blood sugar. In others, it can raise your blood sugar just because it's a stressor. So it's just kind of this fine line, different responses. So they just wanted to be safe. Also, when you do the slow breathing, or at that time, just reduced breathing, so you increase your carbon dioxide levels, that's going to improve blood flow and oxygen delivery. And for some people, that can help with insulin sensitivity, which may lower your blood sugar. That's a longer transition, but they were mainly worried about like a diabetic, I think, passing out or something like that. But and again, like I'm very I try to be empathetic to that, because I could see how that's like also pretty, I could see someone be like, well, that's not fair, but I don't know. I think he didn't want to hurt anyone. That was his whole intention. I just don't want anyone to get hurt doing these breathing techniques. So like if you have type 1 diabetes, maybe you shouldn't, I think he was just trying to be respectful.
Yeah. And I mean, and you don't know how, maybe how, in control and aware people are of their condition. And I mean, when you've grown up with it, you're kind of probably more tuned in than, developing later in life, even, right? You really are. It's a part of who you are, part of your normal everyday person. So it's not you are sensitive to these changes. Obviously, you kind of can feel like, oh, something's maybe a little bit high, a little bit low. I need to, change something right now.
And the inevitable lawsuits from his parents.
Yeah,
you want to protect yourself from that.
I'm curious though. You mentioned like how the slow breathing or the breath holds, could increase your oxygen uptake in your cells through the blood because of the holding of the carbon dioxide. There's like better exchange happening between the blood and the cells, and that transference of oxygen, and how over time that might help to regulate insulin levels or blood sugar. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Is it like a cumulative effect, or what's some of the research that you've read or from your own experience?
So there's lots of things going on that could potentially, like with the slower breathing techniques and with CO2 even, that could potentially help people with diabetes. So it's not usually one thing. It's like a culmination of like several. Like for the big one, from my experience, is just the relaxation response. So when you do like these slow breathing techniques, your body's parasympathetic rest and digest system activates, and that relaxes you. People with diabetes are under a lot more, like there's the emotional stress of having diabetes, but then there's just like the physiological stress of blood sugar shifting up and down. And so we have higher, or let's say how to word this. So when they measure our nervous system, we're usually leaning toward the more stress side, just because of our diabetes. And this shows up in measurements like heart rate variability, and there's one called baroreflex sensitivity. And basically across studies, it always turns out that people with diabetes rank lower on those scales. And so when you do these slow breathing, it helps to reverse that. It both acutely, so in the moment, you ramp up your heart rate variability, you can increase your baroreflex sensitivity, you're basically restoring more activity to the parasympathetic nervous system, and you feel good. It just relaxes you, you feel calm and happy, and that can over time accumulate into a more stable nervous system. And a more stable nervous system means less emotionally reactive, less cortisol, less stress hormones, and that's going to help with blood sugar regulation. So that's one way with time that it can be really helpful. The second one is what we've been talking about, like sleep. Like if you learn to put your body into a more parasympathetic state, you sleep a little bit better, you use some mouth tape if it helps, not everyone, some people, right? No religion here, just try it and see if it works for you. It can better sleep, better insulin sensitivity. That's like really, really well established now, that sleep has a direct relationship to insulin sensitivity.
Wow.
And then the rest, there's like so many neat, nerdy things that we could spend hours. Like one, just a real simple one, is breathing through your nose. Like, your nose does a lot of things to help make sure oxygen gets into your blood and into your tissues. So like actually get to where it needs to go. And so when you breathe through your nose consistently, you're increasing the oxygen levels at your cells. And this is a primary complication of diabetes, is that through all of the inflammation and all the basically bad things going on because of the high blood sugar, we get a buildup of reactive oxygen species, and it ends up causing tissue hypoxia. So our cells don't get enough oxygen. And it's not like breathing through your nose just reverses it and you're good to go, life's perfect, right? But if it helps in any way, it's going to be beneficial. And so like for me, I didn't measure that. I don't know exactly what my tissue oxygen levels were, but I could feel so much better from just breathing through my nose. And so I know intuitively that definitely plays a role with diabetes, that helping or partial reversal of that tissue hypoxia is playing a huge role in insulin sensitivity, inflammation, and all these different things that are chronically putting us into a stress state and chronically causing insulin resistance.
Can you say again what exactly is happening when you're breathing through your nose versus your mouth? Can you go over that one more time with us?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I kind of just glossed over it, but
no, it's so fascinating though, and especially for our listeners who all, they're all practicing yoga, and they're all, being encouraged to do a nostril breathing. They're also being encouraged to do chest breathing versus belly breathing, and then vice versa. And so I think it'd be fascinating for our listeners to understand, what's happening with those different things.
Sure. Yeah. With the nose in particular, there's lots of interesting things it does. Some of the I guess primary ones are like the warming and the humidifying of the air. So it's kind of acting like an air conditioner, so that when it gets into your lungs, it's the right temperature, it's the right moisture content, so that oxygen exchange can occur. So I call it an air conditioner just because that seems to be a word people get, but it's just, it's getting you ready. There's also
or humidifier.
Yeah, humidifier. Go ahead.
In a close relationship to your family history, having brought the air conditioner to Florida, I understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Why you
right?
relate that way.
And a filter too, right?
Filter. Yep, it filters. So we have like all these little hairs, right? You could see your nose hairs and the cilia lining the airways, and then we have inside your nose. There's these like conch-like structures, these turbinates that are all swirly, bony structures that help particles stick to the side of them so that they don't, it creates turbulence, which allows air to bounce up against the side of your nasal passages and can stick some of the bigger particles there. And so and then the biggest one though is nitric oxide. So our paranasal sinuses create nitric oxide continuously, and they release it into our nasal airway. So when you breathe through your nose, you actually carry nitric oxide down into your lungs. And so it does many things. One is that it sterilizes, so it actually helps to filter the air. So it can neutralize viruses and bacteria, and it's antifungal and all these or antimicrobial and all these different things. So that's really crazy. And then once it gets into your lungs, it's a vasodilator. So nitric oxide, basically why athletes eat beets, or beet juice, is because it high in nitric oxide, it opens up the blood vessels, and this improves blood flow in the lungs. And this is really well established. Kind of increasing the blood flow in the lungs means more oxygen exchange, better exchange in the lungs, and you're going to get more oxygen in, and that's going to help downstream with getting more oxygen to your body. So lots of things going on. It also slows down your breathing naturally. It's a smaller hole, right? So it actually slows your breathing down, which is more relaxing. So it more naturally activates the calming side of your nervous system versus mouth breathing, which is going to naturally be faster. Of course, you can slow down your mouth breathing. You can consciously do it, but in general, if you're not paying attention, the mouth breathing will be a little faster.
And that's why using the tongue in pranayama is so effective, because it slows down breathing through your mouth. When you roll your tongue and then breathe in, you're using a smaller...
Oh, like shitali.
Yeah. Shitali. Yeah, you're breathing...
It also is cooling.
It's cooling. That's so fascinating.
And that's the cooling is a good thing to mention, because when we say like, oh, the nose warms and humidifies, like so does the mouth. Like if you breathe through your mouth gets dry, right? It's taking that moisture, it's taking that heat. So it does warm and humidify the air pretty much the same, but it's the chronic thing. Yeah. You don't ever get a dry nose, right? You don't wake up with a dry nose because you've been breathing through it all night. You wake up with a dry mouth, right? Yeah. Because your mouth isn't meant to have the airflow constantly, whereas the nose is perfectly designed to always be breathed through. You can't close your nose, right? You can't just be like, I'm going to close my nose and breathe through my mouth. Like, but you can close your mouth anytime you want, right? So it's like your nose is always there to be breathed through. It's like meant to be the main source of air. The mouth is there when necessary, kind of.
When you're jogging.
Yeah. No, when you're running. Harmony. When you're sprinting full speed from a lion. Then it's acceptable.
Okay.
Wow. And have you read anything about using the chest versus the belly to breathe?
Yeah. So the general concept is that when you breathe into your chest, you're breathing into an area that gets less blood flow. So if you think the lungs are positioned vertically and gravity is going to help the blood sink more to the lower lobes of the lungs, and the shape of the lungs too, they kind of get wider at the base. And so you have more blood flow and more surface area near the base, the bottom of the lungs, than the top. And so when you breathe into your chest region more, you're emphasizing more airflow into the more upper portions of the lungs. And this is going to make gas exchange not quite as robust as when you breathe more deeply into your belly, so to speak. You're not actually breathing into your belly, right? Yeah. You're seeing the sensations of the breath apparent in the belly, but that's helping to draw the air deeper into your lungs where it can get better gas exchange and therefore be more efficient. So it's basically about efficiency, whether it's like chest or belly, so to speak. Now, I don't know if there's actually been a study showing that, like, oh, let's actually measure oxygenation somehow and have people chest breathe versus like belly breathe. But the argument is intuitively just makes sense. And then there is like lots of research on belly breathing being beneficial in so many different ways that it's kind of a no-brainer. And it does other things with your brain. Let me just stop because I'm going to get too excited. I'll stop there.
No, tell us about the brain. We're so excited about the brain.
Well, we got to go here.
But it really is a point of interest because, in almost every other yoga form that I've looked at, the belly breath is shown to be incredibly beneficial to parasympathetic sensation and stimulation, and you are very relaxed. And yet within the form of orthodox Ashtanga yoga that Harmony and I practiced, the emphasis was so much on constraining the belly and forcing breath deeply into the upper chest. And the thinking was that, you're increasing lung capacity.
I disagree with that. I don't think that it's about...
Do you disagree with the premise that was the situation?
Yes.
That's what we were told to do?
Yeah, I don't think that's what we were told to do. I think that there's a difference between using Uddiyana Bandha, which is your lower belly, your pelvic floor area, and tightening or strengthening, pulling that in, engaging just the lower belly, which is below the navel, which we were always told, 3 fingers below the navel.
Yeah.
So that lower abdominal area, pelvic floor area, when you're tightening that, what it actually allows you to do is breathe into the belly. You're not lifting up into the diaphragm area. It actually, when you engage the lower belly, it allows you to expand and breathe into the diaphragm more fully, which is this belly breath. When that part is relaxed, you actually cannot engage and breathe and use the diaphragm as much. So for me, I don't think it was ever about breathing into the chest versus the belly. I think when you engage bandhas,
you're breathing into both.
You're actually expanding your diaphragm more, but maintaining that strength of the pelvic floor, which does activate the vagus nerve, which allows your body to relax a little bit more. Anyway, we digress.
The vagus nerve is when we're going to talk now about brain waves.
Well, we could talk about brainwaves, sure.
But when you breathe into your belly, how does that affect your brain?
That's we got to talk about that.
To know.
And if people are interested, I post all this on Instagram, so you can see like the actual studies, and they're pretty neat. But there was a study, I think it was like 2 years ago. Don't quote me on that, but essentially they had these people lay down and go in an MRI and breathe, and they were looking at the complete yogic breath. So they said, okay, one time you're going to breathe as deeply as you can into your belly. That's the first step. Then the second step is the ribs. And then the third step is the chest and clavicle kind of motion. But they did them individually. So it's like either one time you're just doing the belly breath, one time you're doing rib breath, and then the third time you're doing chest breathing. And then they measured cerebral spinal fluid flow. So cerebral spinal fluid is this like clear cushion, I guess you already know. I don't know.
There's a kind of there's a rate of cerebral spinal flow that they've been looking at, and it's it's different from your heart rate, it's different from your breath. It's a much slower rate, but that they were I've seen studies that it can be that there was a rate to it in the first place, and then that it could be affected by different activities. It's
breathing is one for sure. Because basically, because it also it clears waste from your brain. It brings nutrients and hormones to the brain. So it's really important for brain health. And what they found is when you breathe into your belly, it increased. So I guess two things that are neat. First, as you inhale, the cerebral spinal fluid goes upward into your brain. And as you exhale, it goes downward back down your spine. So that's really neat. So it's kind of counterintuitive that it goes up as you bring the air down. The fluid goes up, and then as you breathe out and the air goes up, the fluid goes back down. It's fine. And what they found is that during the belly breathing, the flow toward the brain increased by 28% on average.
Wow.
During the ribs, it was 21 or 23, and then during the chest breathing, it was 16. And they said the chest breathing was not statistically significant. So, for what that's worth. So essentially, they were showing that with just breathing deeply into your belly, you increase this cerebral spinal fluid flow, the CSF flow to your brain, which could be one reason why belly breathing is so relaxing and beneficial to our overall health.
Wow.
Super. And then we came back to intra-abdominal pressure. So sort of the stuff you were just talking about, Harmony, when you activate the diaphragm, it pushes down into the gut region, right? And it creates higher pressure in that region, and that pressure squeezes the fluid upward, and it pushes it upward from, that could be an awful explanation. If there's any scientists, they might say, oh, he's an idiot. But that was my interpretation of it. Is that it pushed it up.
I was gonna say it must have something to do with that intra-abdominal pressure, that it's activating a greater flow of that cerebral spinal fluid, which is really interesting when you think of yoga and the metaphor of kundalini and awakening this psychosomatic energy and it flowing up the spine, and how it's all related to breath and breath holds and different things, right? There's some real science actually behind some of this more esoteric, metaphysical, mystical kind of explanations.
That's always the thing, right? You when you don't have science, you use metaphors, right? It's you don't understand where rainbows come from, and you say, well, it's Noah's Ark. That was a promise from God. That's why we have rainbows. But once you understand light refraction, then you don't need those metaphors to describe it.
But they're still nice to have.
And so then with yoga, you have the same thing. People are describing metaphysical conditions, but you can reach an entirely different audience if you have a scientific explanation for why belly breathing works or nasal breathing works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is interesting because with specifically pranayama, I don't know much about all the different limbs of yoga and all these different, so I can't speak to that. But when I look at pranayama, it's everything is based. Our science backs up almost all their claims. There's little discrepancies here and there, I'm sure, but for people who are just being intuitive and listening to their bodies and like, yeah, they had it nailed down amazingly. And it's really like, it's exactly what you just said. Like, if you want to get to the right audience, you got to read a few papers and then explain it scientifically. Right. And that's really cool because it is really neat to learn like the difference between the left and right nostrils and like how powerful that can be. And like these subtle things that like yogis knew there was these cycles in our nostrils and would be in tune with them and say, oh, if I'm breathing through my left nostril, this is a time to be contemplative and actually, meditate or do something that's more focused. And if my right nostril's going, I need to clean and be active and eat my food because my digestion will be heated. So there's all these really neat things that they knew, they just figured out. And we just, do a couple studies to prove them. So
yeah, nice. What's also fascinating, with the right and the left, and in yoga, it's the Ida and the Pingala, or the Surya and the Chandra, the heating and the cooling, and it's related to our parasympathetic nervous system, just like you're explaining. One's more active, one's more restful. My pranayama guru, always after eating, they did this practice called left, right, left, where you lie on your left side for like 38 breaths or something, 36 breaths. And then you lie on your right side for half that amount. So like 18 or something. And then you go back to your right side and lie on your right side for 9 breaths. And it's said to help with digestion. And when you lie on your side, it actually opens up the opposite nostril. So when you lie on your left side, it opens up your right nostril. When you lie on your right side, it opens up your left nostril, and vice versa. So it's sort of interesting, right, that there's these ancient like ways to biohack your body to optimize digestion or optimize sleep. And even in when I was in the Buddhist monasteries, they always said, oh, you should sleep on your right side. And again, sleeping on your right side opens up your left nostril, which is more your parasympathetic nervous system, resting and digesting and sleeping. And so it's really just it's so interesting that for like thousands and thousands of years, these contemplative practices, yogis, monks, have tuned in to how to optimize all of these things. And now we have science, scientific experiments and ways to measure it and observe it from a more objective perspective, but that it is kind of proving, like you said, all of the sort of ancient explanations.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like, it makes common sense. It's like, if they've been doing this for thousands of years, like it works. So whatever we find out about it, whatever explanation we come up with through science, like it doesn't matter really. Cause we could, if it turned out it was because of X or Y or brainwaves, it's like, if it's been used for thousands of years, it clearly just works. So we, but it is really nice to have the objective evidence, like to show why, so that people who maybe think it's all a bunch of quackery, so in any case, I've gone like full circle, like not full circle, but like I just like I'm so confident in like the yogic wisdom now, whereas like I used to be all in the science and stuff, and now I'm like, if they've been doing it for this many years, it's probably better than any scientific paper we could ever write, because nothing lasts that long unless it works, right? In the real world. So
and it's so fascinating, like even measuring, they've measured the temperature of the air coming in and out of the nostrils, and the right nostril actually does heat up the air slightly more than the left nostril, right? And the left nostril cools the air more than the right nostril. And so it's just really interesting that, like, these metaphors or these explanations of like the sun channel and the heating channel and then the moon channel and the cooling channel, it's actually the way that it is.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I've never actually heard that one. I mean, I've heard of it, but I've never seen the research. That's cool that they've actually measured it. So it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. I cut my nose off when I was 7, and I find it really difficult to breathe through my left nostril. It's like always impacted and closed. And so I wondered, like, that's why I'm as broken as I am.
Well, yes, Russell. I have great news for you. No, but that's crazy to say that, because Harmony just said, and you just said you sleep great, right? And
Yeah,
so yogic wisdom would say you would need that left nostril open to really sleep good, right? That's why we lay on our right side. So anyways, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying this conversation. I'm really enjoying meeting you. I didn't know you very well. I don't know how the two of you met. I'm interested in knowing that, but it's a bit like I feel like I'm in an episode of The Right Stuff by the novel by Tom Wolfe that was made into the movie with Sam Shepard and all those guys. I'm sitting with an astronaut who's just deeply passionate, all American, and we're all working towards a better future for tomorrow. And I could see you teaching kids all over America the value of good breathing with good science. And we should really get him on the road.
Well, that's what Nick does now. Is he teaches people how to breathe properly.
That's right. That's not all over the world or anything. Just basically from this room on Zoom, but yeah.
we could have Ed Harris play you in the movie, but I think you're a better looking Ed Harris. I
don't know who Ed Harris is.
He's much younger than Ed Harris. Well, that's why you don't know who he is.
Oh, you're
he's
too
old.
young for Ed Harris. Oh no!
I'm gonna Google him while we're here. Right. Why not?
He played an.
You've got a lot more.
Astronaut.
He played an astronaut in The Right Stuff.
Oh, I remember him.
You've got a lot more hair, but in a better looking version of Ed Harris.
40 years younger,
and you do look a lot like him. Well,
but no, wow. But so how Nick and I met was I'm in your what is it? The Breathing 411?
The Breathe for Better. Oh, that's my
Breathing for Better Tomorrow.
Yeah, his newsletter. So if you haven't signed up for Nick's newsletter and this interests you at all, breathing and the science and also just amazing inspirational quotes on breathing and spiritual practice and meditation, and people need to sign up for your newsletter because it's my favorite part of the day.
Oh,
awesome.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
The Breathing 411 is what it is.
Wow.
So,
and then also you have a
is it a Breathing 420?
No, it's I don't. You tell us what it is. I don't know. I'm just it's a newsletter. I don't know.
Breathe and 420.
411. No, I wish. That would be so much more fun. I'll tell you exactly what it is. It is a 100. So I started it I started the newsletter 5 years ago. I started this version of it 3 years ago. Yeah. And it is a 100,000% knockoff of James Clear's 321 newsletter. Because I was that's so convenient. It's so catchy. 321, and it's really simple to read. And so I was literally just talking with my wife, I think, while we were giving my daughter a bath. And I was I just don't like how my newsletter, I was I don't enjoy writing it anymore. And I want something different. And we were coming up with numbers. She's 411. How about that? I was perfect. Yeah. Skateboarding. Yeah. When I grew up skateboarding, 411 was this really popular skate video. My birthday's 411. So I thought, okay, breathing 411. World Breathing Day is also on my birthday, 411. Wow. Which is just a crazy coincidence, meant to be.
Yeah.
So it's also the number you dial for info.
Exactly. See, so you're coming to the Breathing 411, right, for information.
Yeah.
But it's 4 thoughts, a quote, and an answer. So it's 4 random, Harmony was just saying, can be spiritual, it can be breathing science. It's usually a quote from a really famous person, and then me trying to act like I can add value to it, which I can't.
You do add value to it. It's lovely.
This is how you can do this. And then a quote, and then a Jeopardy question. This refers to when your diaphragm spasms. And then it's and you wait, and then what are hiccups, And
what are hiccups?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd like the Jeopardy part. That's Russell's favorite show.
Oh, yeah, that was my favorite show, too.
Wow.
The best.
And how could I sign up for the 411 newsletter?
Well, all you need to do... it's very complicated, let me tell you. I have a website, thebreathingdiabetic.com. And then there's a little tab right there in the top that says newsletter, and you can just sign up there.
And is there an Instagram that I could sign up for as well?
The Breathing Diabetic on Instagram as well.
Let me get on that right now.
Yeah, you need to get on it. Everyone should get on it.
I do share a lot on the gram.
You do, and it's always great. You're
the IG.
You're one of the few people in my favorites. So,
well, thank you. Thank you.
Go to.
I'm sorry for you.
No, you also have a course. Tell us about your course, because I've taken it now twice, I think.
Have you really?
Maybe even 3 times.
Yeah.
I don't know. How many times did you offer it?
Twice. Yeah, I've only done it twice so far.
Okay,
but yeah, you showed. Yeah, because you took the repeat, and I think you came to all the live ones too, huh? Or just about?
I do. Yeah, I think I missed one, but that was the second time. The first time I was there.
I now joined the Instagram, so that's.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I see.
One more follower today, Nick.
Yes. Let me see if I'll follow you back after this.
Oh, you don't have to do that. No one does that anyway.
Reciprocal.
Breathing for...
the course, though. Better Mental and Emotional Health was the title.
Better Mental and Emotional Health, yes.
So that has been expanded just recently, like the past week or so. I basically took that. So the idea was just how can we use our breath for better mental and emotional health? And it's kind of relevant to everyone, right? So thought this is helpful, but I expanded into like an 8-week program with that as the foundation, but it's focused now on like stressful life setbacks. So the whole reason I created the course was like I had went through something in my life that it was tough on me, and like I was like trying to find solutions of my own, and this gave me like a way to heal myself, not like cure myself of anything, just like feel good again, like be back to normal, like be happy about life and excited. So I expanded it into like an 8-week program based on overcoming life setbacks. So like anyone experience like a super stressful life setback, injury, illness, things like that. It's a one-on-one program now where I can take you through the 3 steps and then all the breathing that goes with them. And then I will keep offering the 4-week course eventually. I just got to figure out the timing, but I hope to do that again very soon because it's obviously going to be cheaper. And then some people don't want to do 8 weeks and don't want one-on-one. They want group coaching and stuff. So I just keep trying that.
I love the one-on-one thing, because I think that's one of the biggest obstacles. I mean, that I've found is when you're stressed or like life has thrown you a lot of different things that are stressing you out, and your nervous system's stuck a little bit in that, sympathetic, highly activated state. It's hard to even feel like you can make the time to breathe, even though we're breathing all the time, obviously. But
I know what you meant. Yes,
you just gotta get that mouth tape, sweetie.
No, but like to even like you're like, okay, I know this will help me. I know that setting aside 15 minutes, 12 minutes, 17 minutes, and we could maybe just talk about that really briefly, is the optimum sort of time for a breathwork practice to really like help to reset your nervous system and to have those optimum results. But you're like, okay, I know this will help me, but I don't have time. I can't, how do I fit this in? Right. And so one-on-one, I think, is really helpful because it kind of like gives you that accountability. It gives you some structure, and also it gives you like support where someone can really help walk you through it a little bit. Right. Because without the accountability, without the structure, you're just like, I'll do it tomorrow. And then tomorrow never happens. And then you're never getting out of that hyper activated state. Like the stress response just keeps staying where it is rather than normalizing or coming back to a neutral place.
Yeah, exactly. And that's my hope, is like because I've done one-on-one coaching here and there, but I've never made it a formal thing for myself consistently. And I think that'll really be more helpful to people, because I love teaching. So I teach in any scenario. I love to like educate because I'm just so excited about it. As you can tell, I get real jazzed up when I talk about breathing, but like being able to have the accountability and stuff, I think will be really helpful to people, and personalize it. Cause like if you're going through, let's say, an injury and someone else is going through like a divorce or something, like it's the same exact breath practices, but the meaning you give to them is what really gives it power. Is like when you look at mindful breathing, just being aware of your breath as like an acceptance of life, like you're accepting the breath, you're not changing it, you're accepting it. And when you frame it that way, and then you frame it, for that person, like you have to accept this event that's occurring, because that's the first step, right? In any kind of recovery is acceptance. So it just gives it a little bit more like personality to these simple breathing exercises.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, so tell everyone before we go, what is the optimum time? Because I found this really interesting.
Okay.
And I learned it from you. For doing a breathwork practice, and they've done some studies that show there's sort of a very a minimum amount.
Yeah, minimum effective dose is 400 hours a day. No, I'm just kidding. All day, every day.
What the fuck is that? I can't do that.
Just keep breathing.
She set it up to. She sounded like it was going to be too good, so I had to just throw it out. No, there's lots of different. So the minimum seems to be around like 12 minutes. 10 to 12 minutes seems to be like the. This isn't like, I'm going to be a monk and I'm going to be zen out and life's going. This is just like to see any effects that are like meaningful in your life, but not like floating on clouds all day. About 12 minutes. There's lots of like areas that this pulls from. So like Herbert Benson he discovered the relaxation response. He said about 10 to 12 minutes. Amishi Jha, she's like this world-renowned expert in attention, how our attention works. She discovered 12 minutes for training our attention. Then there's like people studying heart rate variability and nervous system regulation. They found about 10 minutes a day is enough to see meaningful improvements in heart rate variability. And so it kind of draws from all those. It seems like around 10 to 12 minutes is the sweet spot. But if like you're real stressed, you have some really crazy thing, you could do like 2 20-minute sessions, or, to reset your nervous system and then, taper it down. But, there's more like extreme interventions that can be helpful in some cases. But I always start with just the 12 minutes a day with people, because people are so busy. Like everyone's got too much to do. No one wants to be told that they need 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening. And so if science tells me I can do 12 minutes and help them, that's what I'll go with. So that's where I start with people.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful.
And you can also, really, and this is like super woo-woo sounding, but when you slow down and breathe slowly, you can really like create time for yourself. Like it actually, it's like, I don't have time to do this, can become, I create time by doing this, because like you're actually training your awareness. You're slowing things down in life, right? Like when you walk outside after a breathing practice, like you notice the trees, like you notice, you're aware of life. You actually live more of the life you are living, which is the most powerful part, right? To actually experience being alive. And so when you do these practices, think of it as like, I'm creating more life, because I'm going to actually notice my life. I'm actually going to have gratitude. I'm going to be experiencing it. So that's a way to frame it to motivate people.
I love that, because we don't often recognize that the time is an emotional experience. And
exactly.
Every day we have like the exact same amount of time. And sometimes it feels like we have enough time. Sometimes it feels like we don't have enough time. And so I love that we are actually creating time, because we're regulating ourselves emotionally. We're creating that greater attention, that greater awareness, that greater clarity in our mind, more space in our thoughts, in our mind, regulating our nervous system, regulating our emotions. And so then we can face things and handle things in a way that feels more regulated, more calm, more centered, which gives us the feeling and the sense that we have more time.
It's amazing, because I do really feel like the value of the 30 years that we put into our yoga practice, which is occasionally there are doubts, but the value seems to be there is a reflex in your nervous system for regulating yourself, and that you have an awareness of when you're dysregulated, and which is so similar to our entire childhoods and adolescence. And then he's like, oh, I'm going back into that dysregulated state. I'm going to do something to regulate myself. I'll take a breath.
For 12
I'll
minutes.
remember to put my phone down, remember to actually, just, enjoy the walk with the dogs rather than try and get work done while I'm walking the dogs, and you see something happening and you remember to breathe. And that's so much the hardest part about being dysregulated, being stressed out, being worried, is remembering that you have a technology to bring yourself back to centeredness.
Yeah, amazing. Like you're describing, the whole point of meditation, right? Meta awareness, like noticing when your mind is being drawn to different things that are that aren't helping, and then having the awareness, just like when you focus on your breath and you come back to it to like bring it back. Like, okay, I'm spiraling out of control right now, or I'm letting this thought win, or I'm going and so developing that meta awareness is like maybe the best of all the benefits of it is like just that, like knowing you need to change something, right? And that's like super helpful.
Yeah, and I love that about the breath too. And this relates to what you were saying, Russell, and also what we've been talking about. That it really is like the best tool that we have to help us feel embodied immediately. Like it brings us into that present moment. It brings us into the now, because you can't think about breathing and be aware of your breath and be thinking about like anything else, really, right? Like, so all of a sudden you're like in this moment with this breath, in the now, in your body, feeling the sensations. It's such a powerful tool of meditation and of any kind of somatic embodiment practices. It's, I think, the most effective thing to help calm the mind and bring us into present moment awareness.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize that, because it's like your breath is always there. It's so obvious that we always can breathe, but like when you take it like you just explained it, it creates so much power, because it's like and I know I talk about this a lot in the course because I do it all the time, but it's like I'll be at the park with my daughter and I don't like think, oh, I'm going to do breath work and focus on my breath, but my breath will bring me back and remind me, hey, you're thinking about work right now. You're thinking about a post you're going to make. You're thinking about something that's completely irrelevant to life. And it's like, okay, I'm back in my breath. I'm back home. Okay, back to my daughter. Now, like, it's not like, oh, let's just focus on our breath all day. And that's not, like, to me, that's not the point. It's like to actually live life. And so having that tool that's always with you to bring you back is super powerful.
Yeah. And if you notice, like if you're starting to feel, I mean, I do this all the time. If, you're starting to feel like feelings of anxiety or anxiousness or tightness in the breath, or your thoughts are racing or whatever it is, you feel your heart rate increasing. You can always use that breath to just like really slowing down your breath and using that as an immediate tool, lengthening the exhale, helping you to stimulate the parasympathetic response to bring you into this moment. It's so effective, and it's like an immediate remedy to help you calm down. You don't have to take a pill. If people want to take a pill because it's easy, just take 2 minutes and slow your breathing down and get really, really aware of your breathing. It's just as easy and it's just as effective, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's right in front of your nose, right? It's almost so obvious. It's like all great answers, right? It's just right there and right in plain sight.
Yeah. So simple.
Yeah. Simple. It's like almost embarrassing. I feel like a used car salesman most of the time because I'm like, but wait, there's more. It also does this. And I was just like, it's so ridiculous, but it's like, it's all pretty true. Like it's just, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That said, there is room in the conversation for barbiturates. Anytime we want to take a chill pill, you can also take a barbiturate and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show, and you've been amazing. It would be a shame to shoot you off to space because you belong right here on Earth with the rest of us. So you're really much more useful down here.
I like Earth a lot. I don't want to go anywhere else.
Forget about Ed Harris?
Ed Harris is going to shoot you off to space. No. He also went under the water. There was a great movie where we went under the water with Andy McDowell. It's a great film.
That I can be into. I like the ocean. So I can we could start talking now.
We could talk about breathwork, pranayama, and surfing.
I think that was a Ridley Scott film. I think we'll get that. We'll put that in the show notes. So we'll put that in there for you.
No, we'll put it in the show notes. All your links now and how people can benefit from your great wisdom and scientific comprehension of papers that are like, wow.
It's just an obsession. That's the process.
It's amazing.
We'll put the whole bibliography in the show notes. It'll be good.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Finding Harmony with me, your host, Harmony Slater. You can find out more information on my website, harmonyslater.com, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Standing in eternity's shadow, watching the breaking waves, there's a heart